SolidWorks Visualize, and SolidWorks Inspection. Now, just before we begin, can I have everyone just type into the messages down the bottom if you can hear me well and if you can see my screen properly? Okay, wonderful. So we'll make a start here. So the first multi-product that we're going to be talking about is SolidWorks Composer. So basically, we're going to be looking at a couple of different points regarding Composer. We're going to talk about some exploded views, bill of materials. We're going to look at some vector graphics and nice renderings. I'm going to also make a close introduction of this product. Then we're going to look at creating instruction manuals, and finally an interactive basically content that we can create. So let's make a start. I'm just going to close these. Okay, I do have SolidWorks Composer started in the background. Okay, just closing that. So SolidWorks Composer basically can import files directly from SolidWorks, and it is used in order to create and publish. Well, for starters, we're going to look at the manuals. So basically what we have here is a product that has been imported from SolidWorks itself, and SolidWorks Composer can be used to manipulate the graphics and therefore create some instructions manuals. So a little bit of an introduction with Composer. So we have up on the top a few different ways in which we can render a model. So that's a technical illustration, for example, if we're talking about a silhouette mode, and going through shaded illustrative mode, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of options regarding how the visual aspects of the model are represented. So talking about shadow, lighting there, high quality, and so on and so forth as well. Then what we have is the ability to add annotations to our models, so things like lines and arrows and images. We have labels, call-outs, and that sort of thing as well. So when you're talking about Composer, you're basically talking all about the visual aspects of our models. We have the ability to add geometry, and we'll go through some of the other stuff later. So once we've created a visual snapshot of the model, we can save that into one of our views here. So if I double click on my view here, it's basically a combination of settings that we have saved into our snapshot. One thing to also note with Composer, we do have our assembly tree. So the same model that exists within SolidWorks, that assembly structure is imported into Composer as well. And then we also have the bill of materials, which we're going to look at a little bit later. So if I go through this, what I've done, and this is a fairly simple model. We're going to look at something a little bit more complex later, but what we're doing is creating a manual with each step in order to clean this power painter. So this is a painter, and we go through from, say, step 4, for example, in which case you turn and pull down on the container, then you're able to disassemble it in such a way. So it's very visual, not many words are required, and it can, as they say, a picture paints 1,000 words, and this tool can definitely do that. Now, looking at step number 8, okay, and step 9 there. Now, one step hasn't been completed, and this is step number 6, and we're just going to quickly go through the process of being able to manipulate our model. So just basically rotating it around, and this is done in much the same way as SolidWorks. Just turning off one of these features here, And basically, the first thing I need to do is change the render type. So I want it to be a silhouette render. You can see some of the tangent edges are missing there. We can show those by going to construction edges there. So I'm going to select this particular component and just going to say I'd like to move that probably about there for the moment, okay? And select that little bit as well and move that across. Now in the assembly, we can see that we can also select things from the assembly. So if I go to select something in there, we can see how it highlights in the assembly as well. So I can grab this whole sub-assembly like so, and we can also do explosions. So linear explode there will allow me to explode that in such a way. I'll move that accordingly, and a few other arrows maybe to annotate this. So I'm going to go into my arrow, a circular arrow, and I'm able to snap this to the geometry like so and place it wherever I need to. In this case, somewhere around there. I want it to be a bit larger, something like that. And as you can see, I have my arrow selected, and regardless of which component you have selected, we have quite a lot of settings regarding only the way it looks. So all of these settings are to make the arrow look exactly the way you need to for your presentation. So if we have a look at this, I can say I'd like it to be three-dimensional, like so. And I have the ability to just basically drag it that way. If I want to flip the arrow, I can do that like so. And maybe I can also rotate this about just to depict some rotation. And you can see that as I rotate the component, the arrow rotates with it. So let's just, that's looking good. And so that's fine. You've got color settings and quite a lot of different things here. So the radius of the arrow as well, you can select through there. And I'll do just another one to depict all of these components simply coming out. So once again, I have the ability to relate the arrow to any circular edge like so, and that would make sure that it cuts right through the center of those components. And make some changes to this as well. We have the ability to untick this, stay on top, in which case we can see the arrow going through the components. That gives us a nice visual effect. And also, if I want, I can add a gradient to depict motion like so. And this looks like the step is complete. Once you have the step complete, you can simply update our snapshot in order to complete step number 6 there. Once you're done completing your graphics, including our cover image at the end there, we have the ability to publish this, and we publish it into a particular folder structure, and then our manual can read all of these images directly. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is make a change to this design. A lot of the time, you would have gone through the process of creating your manual, which may be 10 pages, it may be 110 pages. And so if you make a change to the design, a lot of that change has to go through each and every page of the manual, and that takes hours and hours of effort. In our case, what I'm going to do is simply do an update, and we can do an update directly from a model within SolidWorks, so from a SolidWorks file, which I have somewhere here, or we can do an update from an actual SolidWorks Composer file as well. So just going through this and getting my updated file and simply hitting update. So what's changed? This nozzle has changed. So basically, one, it's red, and number two, it has a few more ribs onto it. Now, that change propagates through to my cover image, but what about all of the work that we've done through the other images? If I have a look at step 6, I can see that that actually also propagates through step 6 and all of the other steps that are basically being used. Now, having a look at my actual manual, I have it here in Microsoft Word, but the medium can be anything. So we can have a publisher document, we can have a PDF document that we're using. It doesn't really matter. And so what we do is basically, so I've pre-created some of this stuff. As you can see, image number 6 is the old image, and also this is all old design. We have updated this to a new design. We've made changes to our images, and so what I'm going to do is Publisher in Composer is simply publish all of these changes, and I can do that by simply going to one of my workshops, and we have the ability to publish quite a lot of different things here. I'm just going to publish my high-resolution images. I can use this multiple option to publish all of my images at once. Simply hit save, and saving them in the correct location. So that is my correct location, and having a look at the bottom, we can publish images in bitmap, JPEG, TIFF, and PNG as well. So we can see the existing images in there. All I'm going to do is save my new design. In the manual, then, all I have to do is select everything and simply hit F9 to update. And as I do that, you can see the cover photo is updated. We can see that our design in image 6 is updated, and in all the other images as well. Now, this is only a 3-page document, so that's not a problem. But imagine if you had a model or basically a document that is 100 pages or 200 pages, which is very common for more for larger designs. So then you have in one snap basically being able to update the whole document with the changes, all of the images, and so on. So this in itself is really the core of SolidWorks Composer. Being able to do all of that in one go is probably reason enough to have this in your organization. However, Composer can do quite a lot more than that. So we've looked at some tools regarding how to create our images. We've looked at how to publish these images into a document, okay? And we've also had a look at how to update any design changes through Composer directly to our manual. So I'm just going to close that manual at the moment. I'm going to close this, and we'll go through now and have a look at a little bit more of an advanced design. So I'm going to have a look at, just going to open a new model. Very quickly there. And I can actually open this using another tool. Let's just go through and use my SolidWorks Composer Player. So SolidWorks Composer Player is there, and this is actually a free tool that you can give to your customer, or you can have sitting in the factory on multiple computers. No license is required, and is basically a viewer for the content that's being created using SolidWorks Composer. So let this file open. This is a little bit larger. There we go. And if I just maximize this, so here we have a little bit more of a complex design, and what we have is some interactive content. So you can definitely, we've seen how you can use Composer in order to create physical PDF instruction manuals. But what if you wanted something a little bit more interactive? And please note, this is a 3-dimensional model. So you can at any time zoom into an area and have a look at it properly. So if I zoom out and just have a look at some of this. So this is interactive content that you can easily create with Composer. For example, having a look at some of the operational features. By clicking onto it, I have the ability to check see how the steering works, for example, by simply clicking on it, looking at the stabilizers and how they work, also the this replacement boom, how that operates. Then I can go back home by clicking on my button up on the top there and having a look at some maintenance operations, okay? Looking at the controls overview maybe, just to familiarize yourself with, you know, what each handle does there. You can go back. And this is all done while I'm going through from one to the other snapshot. This is all done through the easy creation of images as we did previously with that step 6. If I want some interactive instructions or maybe how to remove this drill head, I can simply click onto it, okay? And I have some steps there. I can go forward and back through the steps. Step number 1 says rotate the placement boom to the side of the vehicle. Clicking next, and that takes me to the next step, lower the placement boom, and so on. On your end, it might be a little bit clunky because we are viewing it over the internet, but the animation moves nicely from one view to the next. Moving on, so lowering the drill boom and supporting it with a lift truck, moving forward through and actually disassembling it, removing the retainer caps, and next, and taking it out. So if you have a new employee starting, or if you simply want to depict how you know, certain processes need to be followed with your design, this is a very easy, intuitive way, minimum words that you can use. So it is really a very nice tool. And last but not least, looking at some of the bill of materials of this. So once again, looking at a particular area that we might want to concentrate, okay, just clicking on this area of our design here, okay, we can look at any of these, digging deeper into the model and getting an exploded view, getting a bill of materials that looks quite nice. Okay, so this is something that can't be done in SolidWorks as such, simply because the bill of materials module in here is so powerful that you can manually basically create how you want your components to be numbered. So going through and digging really deep into the design of this expander pin in this case, and you can have the software connected externally so that you can say add to cart and actually purchase this pin, for example, going back home. So this is one way to take Composer far beyond just your physical instructions manual of your design. And I'm just going to show one more file before we move on with the interactivity in mind. So just going back to my Composer. So here we have an animation, a way of really depicting step by step how you can execute certain procedures. So operator moves towards the control panel of this rinse label machine. You can see that this is a quite a large model actually. So if I hit this play button there, that takes me to my control panel. Operator switches to manual mode. So we need to switch to manual mode, click play, initialize the change request to manual, validate, and request the door to open. So the red button turns green, and we can now operator opens the door by pressing security button. If I click play, okay, and we can now continue. So this is all something that you can do very easily with SolidWorks Composer. by clicking play, here you can go through quite a lot of steps, instructions regarding doing anything really. And you see that play, the camera moving. And of course, no engineer is really required to be able to create this type of content. It's fairly easy software to work with. Okay, and going back home. And that is basically, in a nutshell, SolidWorks Composer. We do have more elaborate videos and webinars that we've done in the past that you can request and have a look at. But this was, in a nutshell, what SolidWorks Composer can do. I will now move on to SolidWorks Visualize. Now, Visualize is a standalone software. Let me just close that. And it is used basically for rendering, high-end rendering of your products. I'm just going to open Visualize now. And as I said, it is standalone, therefore it will not consume a SolidWorks license. You can have somebody working on SolidWorks Visualize while others are using your SolidWorks licenses. I'm going back and just opening a model here. And we're going to be using this espresso maker coffee machine in order to demonstrate what SolidWorks Visualize can do. So it's just taking a little while to open because it is a fairly large file. It's 18 plus megabytes there. Now, what I'd like to do first is probably open this up in SolidWorks. So this is our design of the espresso machine. And this is in SolidWorks 2017, and it looks okay, but it's definitely not a marketing type of image. So what we're going to do is have a look at the difference that Visualize can create for us. So this is my espresso machine. I'm just going to close that there. I'm going back into Visualize. Okay, so what we have here is the espresso coffee machine imported into SolidWorks Visualize, and we have some changes that we've made. We're going to have a look at some of the options that are available in here. So first of all, having a look at my assembly structure. Once again, the assembly is imported into SolidWorks Visualize. So you can have a look at each and every component, okay? And underneath, basically, the visual aspects of that component. It also will import any colors, any textures that you've placed into SolidWorks. They will be imported in here. You can change the structure of the assembly by grouping components as well, and so on and so forth. Having a look at this, for example, here, we can see, okay, I can rotate that around, and we have fast mode in actually live rendering. So as we leave this in the background, it's going through passes and it's slowly rendering. We have the ability to add multiple appearances, obviously, to different components. By clicking on my component, you can see that the finish is this satin finish aluminium. If I go into the color, very easy to modify the color. Also numerically, you can do quite a lot right on the fly. And actually, as you change it, see how it renders in the background and whether it looks the part. I'm going to keep my original here. And we've got a couple of different options. It allows you to save snapshots of different configurations. Basically, looking at our orange configuration here, we have a green configuration, and we have a charcoal configuration. Just a couple of options that you might want to place in there so that you know, the managers or the marketing department can have a look at them and say, okay, well, we'll go with one of these. If I go into my actual renders and have a look at these. You can see, so we have charcoal, and the quality, as you can see here, is pretty amazing of the renders, and we have the other as well. Okay, so clicking OK there, and closing that down. Once you've created some of these different settings, we have the ability to push our snapshot, push our different configurations, different colors to a render queue. So if I go into my output tools there, okay, I can say I'd like to render all of the configurations, so all of the different colors, and sending them to a render queue. So we don't have to necessarily render them straight away. We have the ability to place them in a queue such as this, and then once we're done with all of the models set up, then we can say, okay, well, start the render queue and let it render overnight, because it is fairly time consuming. If you don't want an item in the render queue, you simply can remove it from there. And okay, so having a look at some of the other options, what we have in this case is, if I select a particular part, say this top, and have a look at its finish. Okay, so this plastic component uses this particular finish, which is in the appearances options, and it is a molded type of appearance. Having a look at some of the settings that are available in here, okay, and probably a good idea to zoom in so that we can see properly. So talking about the textures, we can change the color, the alpha channel there. What if I go to the bump and have a look at, say, maybe the bump strength? We can make it obviously really smooth on the fly, or maybe we can add some extra bump, like so. As I said, the ability to make changes live to textures are also available, very easy to use as well, just leaving it there. Okay. The next is my scenes, which controls my environment, so reflections, background, and that sort of thing. Okay, so if I go into my cameras, also I have different cameras, different snapshots. My default camera will take me back to my default camera there. So similar in this case to Composer, in that you can take snapshots of this. Going back to these, we can see that we're using this wide panel studio environment. Changing the environment is basically as simple as dragging and dropping it in. And you can see how using this German dirt road environment, we now have quite a lot of green reflections. And if I actually have a look at the reflection closely, okay, you can see that on the chrome portions of the design. See that there as well. So very simple, very easy to do. And I'm just going to use my original white environment. Again, going back to my default camera. And there we go. Now, in terms of appearances and environments, we have a vast library that you can download from the internet, or use some of the ones that already exist. So do we want the environments, for example? We have ones that are in there already. So, but we definitely can use the internet, and online we have a vast library of all of these, not to mention that you can, of course, create your own, so import some from other software. Going through some of these cameras, so we can see that we have a top view camera here, and looking at some of the settings that exist. Okay, so we have the ability to set depth of field. Here you can see we have focus up on the top of the handle, and the bottom drip tray is slightly blurry. If I change to my drip tray camera, I'm just changing some of the focal points where you can actually select the point to focus on, click there, and actually click on the drip tray, and that will refocus onto that particular point. Perspective view also, going back to my default camera. So have a look at some of these renderings, and we do have the ability to go through and say, we want to render all cameras, for example, and send that to the queue. And that will render all of these different cameras in the way that they have been defined. One thing that is very important is post-processing of our renderings. Most of the time you would render them in a piece of software, and then you'd have to go and use other software in order to post-process. In this case, SolidWorks can do it. SolidWorks Visualize can do it in-house directly. So we have post-processing, the ability to darken or lighten the image, saturation, exposure, brightness, gamma correction, and so on and so forth. So quite a lot of post-processing tools that are available to us in here. So if I, for example, get rid of this vignette, you can see the difference in here, for example, as well. So seeing the difference with just using that little option there. And if I have a look at my finished renderings with the different cameras, starting from maybe our default, we have focal point on the handle, focal point on the drip tray. So the difference there. And it actually does look quite realistic. It does look like this is actual coffee inside the cup. And another perspective mode there. So a very powerful tool to use for all of your marketing of your designs. Now, it doesn't actually stop there. What we have the ability to do is also create a VR image, and so that's this particular option there. And VR is simply rotating the model around the angles that you actually want rendered. And the software will take all of those snapshots, and that's all it is really. And then you go in here and you render that as a VR, send it to the queue. What you get at the end of that, if I have a look at this, and this is opened in just Chrome, and we can see interactive rendering of the model. One thing to note is as we rotate it, you can see the visuals change. You can see the lighting and the reflections change as we rotate, and really an extremely easy way to create something like this that customers would be able to rotate around, have a look at, zoom in and out, and so on. If we take this to the next step and look at an internal VR render, and I'll just do that, a panoramic render here. Just looking at this, this is actually inside a private jet, a Bombardier private jet, and just having a look at this. So this is actually not a real image, it is rendering, but quite an interesting way to be able to visualize the full space inside one of these jets. So it can be a tool that will push your product to that next step. And this is also, in a nutshell, SolidWorks Visualize. Once again, we do have lengthier webinars that go into detail of how to use the software, basically all of the functions that it can do for you. Just going to close that now, and I'm going to close Visualize. So we've had a look at the ability to create different configurations of your renderings, the ability to create multiple renderings, VR, panoramic, and also looking at the post-processing options that are available in there. Things like visualization or environments can be downloaded from the internet, or you can go through create your own, but we do have an extensive library of those. The final thing I want to show is SolidWorks Inspection. Okay, so if I just open my SolidWorks tool there, Now, SolidWorks inspection deals with first article inspection, basically quality control of your designs. I'm just going to open a particular part. Just bear with me while I switch to my demo files. Okay, so just having a look at this particular drawing. Now, SolidWorks inspection, and I have the adding turned on here. So that's SolidWorks inspection. This is a simple drawing. What SolidWorks inspection can do is automatically balloon each dimension that requires inspecting, grab all of the information required for a report, and then export it into a report. So let's go and have a look at that. So first of all, I'm going to start a new inspection project, okay? And we have some templates regarding what standards we want to use. We have some ANSI standards, we have some ISO standards, and we have our default standard, which I believe that's the Australian standard there. I'm going to start, cancel, just click OK there. And what this will do is it gives us a guided way of forming a report. First of all, it'll ask for things like the part name, the part number, revisions, and so on, and some other settings and options, lot size that we can use. Okay, if you have these into your design already, it can automatically access the custom properties of the drawing and therefore place in the information you require. So say part name is knuckle, click on part number, that's my part number there, part division being 6. So accessing the information from the drawing directly. Okay, document revision, in this case C. Okay, you have the ability to select your vendor, job numbers, you know, quite a lot of different information there, lot size and so on. Then we're going to click on next, and this is where we select basically what type of data we would like to inspect. Dimensions, you know, chamfer dimensions. Do we want inspection only dimensions? Maybe the dimensions that have been specified by the design engineer as inspection. Or do we want all of the dimensions, maybe reference and basic dimensions? Okay, and then click OK, and that will simply generate, number all of the items that need to be inspected. So looking at each particular item, for example, it is showing here item number 8, specification is 12. I can right click onto my dimension, better in here, make it a key dimension very easily. Okay, so looking at that particular dimension there, so making it a key dimension is as simple as that. What if we want it to be classified as a major dimension? So all of the options are there. Method of dimensioning, gauge blocks, for example, and all of that information is stored within. Okay, so we have all of that information down the bottom, and it will appear onto our report. Once we have taken up all of the dimensions that we need to inspect, we can simply export to a PDF, to an Excel, okay, or to a SolidWorks inspection project. I'm going to export to Excel in this case, and I'm going to use my Australian Standards 9102 template in order to export to. Clicking OK, this will export directly to that template based on the Australian standards and give you the report like so. Okay, and so we have the upper and the lower limit of each of those dimensions as designed by the engineer, and the result of the inspection can be entered in here. Say 1 millimeter, for example, you can see that that is within the range and it's green. So if we have 50.1, and that is not within the minimum maximum range, and so it turns red, and so on and so forth. So this is a very simple, easy to use tool in order to quickly be able to create your first article inspection report. Type in your results. Now, if we go on to Inspection Professional, then these results can be entered using an electronic tool. So you can have a tool that plugs directly into the software and can insert these results in for you. So let's have a look at that. I'm just going to close this for the moment. I'm going to open Inspection Professional. Now, Inspection Professional does come as a standalone. So therefore, you actually will not be consuming a SolidWorks license while you're using it. I'm just finding it actually. There you go. It says SolidWorks Inspection. So this is Inspection Professional, and it does not use the SolidWorks software. So I'm just closing SolidWorks in the background. And this application can inspect not only SolidWorks documents, but it can also we can also use PDF documents. So PDF document, which really has no intelligence in it, we can use Inspection Professional in order to capture all of the dimensions required. So I'm going to open a new project using my Australian Standards 9102, and I'm going to open a PDF drawing in this case. So once again, just going to my and just finding that. So this is a PDF, as you can see. Opening that up, and Inspection Professional can also capture information from our PDF directly. In this case, what we have is part name, part number, part revision, all of that sort of thing. So if any of the information is actually within the title block, okay, then we can go through and capture it. So for example, by clicking on this, capture property, this is part name. The part name is plate, and that is captured within there, mind you, from a PDF document. We have the ability, so these are the letters now, we have the ability to edit them. In the same way, part number might be this number there, that gets captured automatically. Part revision, revision 2. Drawing name, okay, let's see the whole thing there. Drawing number, this total number, drawing revision there. So you can capture text directly from the PDF. The software is intelligent enough to pick up each letter and make it editable for yourself. Any custom properties, so material, serial number, whatever else it is that you might want to add, you can add, of course, your custom properties there and add a value to them, and they will appear in the report. Clicking OK, and we now have the ability to start capturing certain information. So if I go into my drawing and say, just getting the correct zoom here. So that's fine. Okay, we can capture things like, say, for example, a note. So let me zoom in to the top there. I'm going to start by capturing a note. I'm going to capture this particular note up on the top. Okay, as I do that, see, analyze blue, and all of the text does appear. We have balloon number 1. Go through, capture my second. There we go. All of the text is in there, which you can, of course, change. And number 3 there. We have the ability to capture a dimension. So this particular dimension here, 0.325 plus or minus 0.02. So the dimension, quantity is 1, the tolerance plus 0.02 minus 0.02, and it gives you the upper and the lower limit. So quite intelligent. Don't have to go through each and every dimension to input that into your report, it comes in automatically. And so we're going to start capturing some of these dimensions. So all of the data is being recorded down at the bottom. Item number 7 is there. We have item number 6, 5, and so on. We have the ability to capture geometric tolerances, such as this particular tolerance here. Okay, it appears as an image and it tells you to see print for the tolerance. Up on the top there, numbers that as well. So capturing this particular one also with the datum there. One more maybe down the bottom over here. Having a look at dimension 7, for example, what do we have? 0.75 plus or minus 0.02. You do have the ability to automatically enter the actual measured values. So 0.7 9, for example, okay, that's out of the range. Or, as I said, because this is professional, you can actually have an electronic tool that can automatically populate this information in. Once we're done, we have the ability to export. Once again, I'm going to export to Excel using the Australian standards. Export. Let me just specify that template there. Yes. And this will export in. If we've used an electronic tool and modified all of the results, then we'll get those entered in here. Otherwise, we can manually still go through and type in values, for example. And that is, in a nutshell, SolidWorks inspection. So we can capture dimensions or other entities from a SolidWorks document, and we can automatically export to a first article inspection report, and that report can be to a particular standard, or you can have a custom template that you create yourself. In professional, we have the ability to also capture text and dimensions from a PDF document, and we can also use an electronic tool to automatically place the inspection dimensions in our results. All right, guys, well, that was the webinar for today, looking at SolidWorks Composer, SolidWorks Visualize, and SolidWorks Inspection. I hope it gave you a bit of an idea of what these programs can do for you and how powerful they actually can be. So if you have any other questions, myself or Vander, who is the multi-product manager, can answer for you. We can perform demos on site for you as well if you're really wanting to look into buying one of these products. Thank you very much.